Greetings, this is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. On tonight's show, weekly contributor Dr. Akili Muhammad will discuss the impact of the COVID pandemic as it swept across the U.S. and the world, adding to famine, food insecurity, and the number of people unemployed. Later in the show, our guest, Sister Sherrie Muhammad, founder and director of Asiatic Minds online school, shares how the school is helping our students to develop their skills, talents, and abilities, and is bringing together educators from across the nation to offer a full educational curriculum. Before we get into the top news, let's do a recap of the current events we recently covered. On yesterday's show, NNV News anchor Willie Muhammad's guest commentators, Dr. Asad El-Malik and Gavin Richards, commented on the temporary suspension of U.S. track and field star Sha'Carri Richardson after she tested positive for THC, the active ingredient in marijuana.
Is this the case? Is it an attempt to stop Black dominance in the Olympics, or is this just an example of a bad decision, which has caused somebody to miss out on an opportunity that they've worked hard for?
You know, there's a scene from the movie Friday where Ice Cube's character Craig is upset with Smokey because they've just gotten into it with Big Worm, and he said, and Smokey tells Craig, "I didn't put that joint in your mouth and make you smoke," right? So is this a way of keeping Black dominance out of the Olympics? I wouldn't go that far at all to say that. What I think it is a 21-year-old young adult made a mistake who was attempting to cope with the death of her biological mother, and she should have had better people around her who would have given her the type of support, community support that she needed in order to cope with such a tragedy in her life.
Willie Muhammad questioned Dr. Asad El-Malik and Gavin Richards about their thoughts on Bill Cosby's release from prison after his guilty verdict was overturned.
What are your thoughts about Bill Cosby's sexual assault conviction being overturned?
It shouldn't have happened in the beginning. I've been on your show platform many times. I've also talked about it on my platform. There was an agreement by the prosecutor, the original prosecutor, Bruce Castor, and that agreement was in writing. I believe he had sent emails and he communicated with Mr. Cosby's attorney at that time, who is deceased, that there would be no charges filed against Dr. Cosby. As a result of that, and Bruce Castor did not believe that the case, if it went to trial, that he was going to have a chance of winning, because he felt Andrea Constant, from the research that he had done and the lack of evidence thereof, there was not enough to go on. There was no probable cause, which is what a prosecutor is supposed to do. They administer justice, and they have to base it off of probable cause, not off political ambitions.
On I Have a Testimony, NNV News anchor Willie Muhammad's guest, Sister Medina Muhammad, shared her family experiences in the earlier years of the NOI, her mother's work as secretary to Master Fard Muhammad, and the influences of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Sister was just about to share just how it feels just to know that her mother and her father actually worked with the Savior who's responsible for the Nation of Islam. Go ahead, Sister Medina.
Okay, yes, sir. It wows me. Sometimes you never know the blessing you have in front of you until it's gone. I've learned more about my mother since she's been gone. She passed in February of 2002. And since we have been blessed to do the exhibits since 2007 with my brothers and a couple of my sisters, and we've been blessed from 2007 all the way up to 2020 to do the exhibits. And the doors that it has opened up for us is tremendous. With Dr. Stacy Muhammad in that exhibit. Oh my God.
Guest contributors Zakia Sankara Jabbar and brother Lawrence Muhammad sat down with Willie Muhammad to set the record straight about the criticism of actor Michael B. Jordan for referencing a Caribbean Emancipation Festival in the initial naming of his forthcoming rum product.
Which one of you all will be able to give us a brief explanation of what cultural appropriation is?
Sure, I'll go for it.
Yes.
And, so basically, cultural appropriation is basically taking the culture of another people, their mores, the things that they do within their culture, and using it for self. And some definitions say without the approval of that particular culture. Some definitions also say those who are in power taken from those who are not in power, those who are quote unquote beneath them. And so taking their particular cultures, using it for their own culture and as their own culture, basically stealing from someone else. So it's different variations of that definition, but basically it's the same, taking from one culture and bringing to another and claiming it, for themselves.
Zakia Sankara Jabbar and brother Lawrence Muhammad discussed the topic of West Point and white rage as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff defended the right of West Point students to discuss race.
What do you think is at the root of the white rage that has always been present in America, but is becoming more and more present during this time that is supposed to be this post-racial society?
Minister Farrakhan has talked about this, but I want to name Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who has created the best definition of racism and white rage that I know of. And I think one of the things that's clear about what's happening is that certain white people understand that they are increasingly becoming a numerical minority in this country. And so there is a lot of fear really at the base of that. And so CRT, which, if we're going to be honest, is not being taught in K-12 schools, but it's a linchpin and a distraction, if you will, for the things that they really do want to enact.
Zakia Sankara Jabbar and brother Lawrence Muhammad also shared their thoughts on India Walton's recent Democratic primary win over the 4-term mayor of Buffalo, New York, putting her on track to becoming the first woman to lead New York's second largest city.
What do you think about this historic victory of Sister India Walton?
Yeah, congratulations. Congratulations to the sister. I want to start a very positive. I understand politics, especially from the municipal level, because I have never run for office, but I've worked on campaigns, and I've been a part of understanding how the sausage is made, as a term that a lot of people use. And I will say that I think that it's good that she does have a worker and a working class focus. That's important. What I'm concerned about always, though, especially with politics now with Black leaders, is who is the hand behind the hand, right? Like who's actually controlling the system.
Rapper and lyricist Golden Child, a Chicago-based hip-hop artist, was Willie Muhammad's guest on I Have a Testimony show, sharing his personal experiences, his unique delivery of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the guidance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan through his music.
So how did you manage your practice of being a member of the Nation of Islam with growing up during your teenage years?
It was a challenge. It was a challenge. I won't lie to you, because you're young, right? You're young. And I made a really, really big life-changing decision at the age of 16. And sometimes, a lot of the times, the decisions that we make around that age, aren't the best decisions, right? But I was blessed, I didn't really know. I felt that I was making the right decision. And as time went on, as I got older, I came into the realization that, I didn't just believe that I made the right decision. I knew that I made the right decision, as I continued to live life. But how I manage it, if we just going to be 100% honest, we're not going to pretend, we're not going to fake, we're not going to cap, as some people say. It was a challenge, right? I was an FOI, but I'm a human being, right? I make mistakes, right? We're not perfect. We sin. We go through our ups and downs. So I went through the same, in a lot of ways, the same challenges a young teenager go through, but it was different though. I went through the challenges with men around me, right? And women around me,
NNV News anchor Naya Tai spoke with weekly contributor Charles Muhammad about how to eat to live, the importance of a healthy diet, understanding caloric intake, and making healthy food choices.
But what would you say to those that strongly argue against any type of animal product?
Well, yes, you cannot argue with history. Now, the Elijah Muhammad does say, do not be a meat consumer. And what we just went over, a consumer eats other animals for energy. So we're not looking to gain our energy from animal products. But there's a doctor, he's no longer alive, named Dr. Weston A. Price. He was a dentist, ironically. And he traveled the whole entire world and studied what other people, other cultures ate, and particularly their traditional diets. And he wrote a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And he studied their teeth and their facial structure. And he said that when they ate a certain diet, they were very healthy. But when they got to eating more refined foods and Western foods, they had bad dental health and their faces began to narrow out and said their jawlines were very narrow.
NNV contributor Tony Muhammad discussed the data analysis concluding that Palo Alto Unified School District and schools across America have been improperly classifying Black and Hispanic students as having learning disabilities and over-identifying them for special education.
What factors might account for improper placement of Black and Brown students in special education?
Well, they arrived at the conclusions because the state investigated. And you have to understand that there was over 10% of the student population that was being labeled as being special education, if you will, or in need of special education intervention. And so that disproportionately affected the budget allocated to special education by the state. And so the state got alarmed and said, okay, what's going on here? And so that was what propelled an investigation to take place. If I could share some statistics with all of you, because this is not just a problem in California, as the newsreel indicated, this is a national problem.
Let us pause for announcements from our sponsors. Coming up is our Global View segment, and contributor Dr. Akili Muhammad will speak on the impact of the COVID pandemic as it has swept across the U.S. and the world, adding to famine, food insecurity, and the numbers of people unemployed. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people, and upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now, 502-219-4848.
This is Sister Sherrie Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
As the COVID-19 pandemic swept across the U.S. and the world, famine and food insecurity increased along with the number of people who are now unemployed.
People think of hunger, they think of the images of, kids you may see with distended bellies or super, super skinny. And actually, that's not really what hunger looks like in the United States for the most part. When you think of what foods are most affordable, that is a lot about processed food, right? Ramen comes up a lot, chips, other things that you can purchase for not a lot of money that does fill up your stomach and makes you feel full. And so when you look at families with difficulty in food security, you often see much higher rates of obesity because when the food is available, folks want to eat more because there's an unpredictability about the food supply. And also, when you are looking to really stretch your food dollar, sometimes it's the least healthy foods that are the most affordable.
Joining us to discuss this is weekly contributor Dr. Akili Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, ma'am. How are you?
Great. Yes, sir. There was talk of famine at the beginning of this pandemic. Do you have any information about the food security in the world and in the U.S.?
Well, yes. I think that's a very strong point about the fact that famine was discussed in the beginning of this pandemic, but it's relatively been hardly any news about it since then. And I would say that with my research, most of what is being mentioned about famine is pertaining to countries that we typically associate with famine, and that is the countries, of course, in Africa that are having difficulty and have been having difficulties. And they're talking about that famine in those areas worsening. And some estimates are in excess of 200 million people will be affected in those areas. And I think it's also interesting that at the beginning of this pandemic, we also saw a lot of pictures of farms that were having food rotting or just having piles of food that hadn't been shipped to certain places. There weren't enough workers to take care of the typical aspects that happen on these farms. And so, that conversation kind of went away as well. But there are predictions that there will be food shortages in this country as well. And I think the segment, the video that we just watched is very, very interesting. And I think we really have to think about the perspective of thinking about what our typical mind frame goes to when we think about famine or hunger. And then we have to start looking at America. There have been extremely long food lines in just about every major city in this country. And so we have to start looking at what she was talking about. And that's the person who doesn't necessarily have really skinny arms and legs and a protruding abdomen, which is severe malnutrition that's been lasting for long periods of time. But we have a large percentage of children in this country that are part of a homeless situation because of their parents. And along with that is a problem with them getting quality food and sometimes food at all.
Now, what do the employment or unemployment statistics look like for us here in America at this point?
Yeah, I was looking through some statistics, and it's kind of hard for me to come to a conclusion that what I'm looking at is honestly true. Very similar to the research that I've been doing about medical problems over the years and this pandemic and the vaccine, all of these things. You look at some of these news stations and the information that they're giving to the public, and it just doesn't match what I am researching or talking to other colleagues about. And so the information that I have found is that it's actually gotten better. I think at the worst, maybe the middle of 2020, they say that the statistics went to around 13.5% of the country that was unemployed. And now they're saying it's back down to 5.3. And so, sometimes you look at these statistics, but then you look at the environment that you live in and the environments that you may travel. And it doesn't seem like a lot of people are saying, they're getting jobs or returning to work. We seem to see pretty much the same type of, I would say, blue collar workers that kind of have continued their work throughout the pandemic. And then a lot of the people that were able to take their computers and set up at home, those people weren't affected as much as some of the other workers that are involved in servicing people. And, now that a lot of these cities are opening back up, there still isn't enough economics in these cities to bring all of these people back. So I don't know. I really don't know how to evaluate these statistics, honestly, but I think we're going to have to watch just the climate of the cities and see how things go.
Right. Okay. Now, one interesting thing that I want to ask you is, do you see God's hand in this pandemic when it comes to these subjects, the famine and unemployment rates?
Yeah, so I think if we look at this, that what we have been going through since early of 2020, if we put it in its proper context, a scriptural context, then we have to use different words. You see, pandemic is what we've been using, but scripture says plague. And there were many different aspects of a plague. There were many different types of plagues. If we look at the story of Moses, of course, you had frogs and you had insects and you had other things like that. And of course, the last one was death. And so if we put this in a proper context, the question is, how much warning has this country and the world had? And is that warning good enough? Is that warning simple enough? Do you understand the warning? Have you totally turned deaf ears towards that warning? And so we potentially could look at the pandemic, we could look at the unemployment, we could look at the famine, we could look at all of these things as part of the plague that the God that we serve is going to bring, because these societies are so extremely against what God has produced. And, there are a lot of people that are paying attention to Lil Nas X's performance at the BET Awards. And we notice that anybody that says anything that could even remotely think that they are attacking or criticizing what he did, they're getting a lot of heat. And so these are the type of things. These are the type of things, whether we understand it or not, these are the type of things that anger God. Lil Nas X is not the fault. We're not trying to fault him. But it's a lifestyle that's being pushed on our people. It's being basically shoved down our throat. And this is the words that are being used in the LGBTQ community. So I'm just repeating what some of them say. Right. But when we have a world that is so full of things that are against the scriptures that God has brought us, then we should expect, just like when you read the scriptures, we should expect that God is going to get to a place where he says, no more, let me bring wrath on these people. And so we should think, because the minister has told us that that's what we have, is a pandemic that came from heaven, meaning that God is speaking about his anger.
And what would you suggest to those who trust your point of view as far as next steps in preparation for famine or getting prepared to be employed? What would you say?
Well, my initial answer would be right back to what I just finished talking about. You have to start with the God that we serve. If you say you believe in God and the world looks like it's going down the drain, then then your question has to be, is there still a God? Can I still rely on this God that I say I believe in? And that would be my initial suggestion. There are many things that we can do, but you got to start there. If you can even start to understand what I just finished saying about this is punishment from God, well, having remorse and repentance is what puts you in the right place with God, right? Scripture says that come out of her, my people, so that you will not partake in her plagues and her tribulations. And so coming out of her is a process that we do where what we think has to come out of the ways of this world first. And when that comes out, then you'll start attaching yourself to things that are more in line with what God wants us to do. And then that way your actions will start to follow. And so there could be many different things and many different subjects, but that would be my suggestion. Start with who and what you call God and start digging into those scriptures or whatever that process is. And you'll find yourself looking and being opened up to new information, because God is never going to leave you alone when you knock on that door.
Good point, Dr. Akili. Last question. How would you instill confidence in those listening when it comes to the expectations for the future? You just mentioned starting with God. For someone who hasn't done that, or maybe has done that in the past, but has reverted back to old behaviors, it may be hard for them to get themselves to start with God and stick with it in the face of where we are in the global, in just society today. So what would you say, or what words of encouragement would you give to those returning or starting their journey and going to God?
Yes, it's a journey like every other journey that you have been on. When you first start any journey, when you first start something new, there's a level of anxiety. There's a level of lack of trust in yourself, a lack of confidence. But in every story, again, back to the scriptures, in the story of Noah, the story of Lot, the story of Jesus, the story of Abraham. And then if you go to the Quran and you talk about some other stories that weren't in the Bible, every single one of these situations where God showed his wrath to the people, there were some that made it out, that he directed. So why would he pull and why would he tell us stories about people that made it out of all of these stories of debauchery and evil and partying and not paying attention to his words? But these people that he chose, they made it out, and he brought them to a place that was much better than they were. And so I believe that's where we have to have our confidence. And then the other thing, as far as famine is concerned, imagine if those of us that are concerned about famine just started growing in your apartment, in your house, in your backyard, just one food that you eat. Say, I'm not going to buy tomatoes after this year. I'm going to do all my tomatoes at my home. I'm going to do all of my bell peppers out of my backyard. If we started to think like that and started to just do a little bit with nature, God will prove to you that he has your back. Because when you get food from nature, you get it in abundance. But when you get it from people that you rely on, you get what they give you. And just really quickly, I'd like to say that the United States is supposed to be giving some food and seeds to some of the countries that I mentioned earlier, like Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, and some of the other countries in the motherland, Africa, as we're talking. And I'm just curious, like, why would the United States go abroad to another country and give them food and seeds? And I haven't heard anything like that being offered to the people in America that are going into lines to get food because they don't have the ability to either purchase it or it's just not available. And so we really have a lot to consider, because we have to first take in consideration, are these seeds tainted with Monsanto poisons? And then these people are now stuck to you giving them food in order for them to eat, right, as well as the food aid. And then here in America, if we have access to seeds ourselves, good seeds, organic heirloom seeds, then we can start growing our own food and bring communities together to help support each other.
Right. Perfect, Dr. Akili. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's pause for our announcements from our sponsors. Then, when we return, we'll be back with an interview of Sherrie Muhammad, who is helping our students to develop their skills, talents, and abilities and is bringing together educators from across the nation. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Akili Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Asiatic Minds Online School is set to deliver the new educational paradigm of the 21st century, offering a full educational curriculum that is helping our students to develop their skills, talents, and their abilities.
The education of our youth affects the future of our people and the world. You may not have a child in Asiatic Minds, but you may desire to contribute to those children who are a part of the school or wish to become. Please consider an annual, monthly, or one-time contribution to help provide scholarships for our students. The Asiatic Minds team humbly appreciates whatever amount you are moved to give.
Joining us is Sister Sherrie Muhammad, founder and director of Asiatic Minds Online School. Greetings.
Greetings. Thank you so much for having me on the show this evening.
Thank you for joining us. All right. What inspired you to launch Asiatic Minds Online Education at this specific time?
Well, Asiatic Minds, it came about out of necessity. For many years, I'm a homeschooling mom, and I've homeschooled my 5 children for over 20 years. And throughout that time, I always wished that they were able to attend the MUI or have something that they could attend that would reflect our household. And so within that time period, I was introduced to an online school that was based out of Atlanta that my daughter, my oldest daughter, was able to attend. But it never occurred to me at that particular time to develop a school based on my beliefs and principles. That came about much later, many years later. When the idea did come about, I did strive to pass the idea along for someone else to make that happen. And I was more than willing to assist to make that school a success. Mm-hmm. But Allah didn't see that as the way at the time. And so I literally opened up a school in my home instead of online. And when COVID hit, that changed the dynamic of that school. We had to take it online. And then it finally hit me one day to go back to the original idea of having an Islamic school online. And from that point on, it's been full steam ahead. Everyone that, I began reaching out to other educators who I knew within the nation, and they were more than willing to be helpful. to put me in contact with teachers and other educators to help me along this path. And so I wanted to have something to offer to those who, first and foremost, children who are in the nation, who may be in a public school, who may be in an environment where they and a handful of other families are the only ones who say Assalamu alaikum, and to help them not feel isolated, as my children were the only ones being educated with themselves. I wanted our children to be able to come together from all over, to be able to have a high quality education. And this pandemic really brought that about. The idea was already there, but this pandemic was like water that just made the seed blossom. And it also, I think it helped people to see mentally that education can happen outside of four walls. So I think people are more ready for the idea now. So that's how Asiatic Minds came to birth. I think it was a very natural progression, and we're here.
Perfect. Is there a need, do you think, to have a new educational paradigm in the 21st century?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we look at the statistics, I was reading study guide number 21 by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And when you look at the statistics that are there, America's educational system has flatlined. The country has flatlined. So absolutely, the educational system has flatlined. There's a quote in Study Guide 21. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that education is the torchlight of civilization. And civilization begins with knowledge. And a civilization ends when that knowledge that originated that civilization begins to decline. Well, we know the base of the knowledge that we're being taught in these school systems. The bottom line is it's white supremacy. That is coming to an end now. That is over. And so that means the educational system, we need a new paradigm. And Master Fard Muhammad came. He came to give us that new knowledge. He taught the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and raised him up. And so we have the seeds, we have the knowledge for a new paradigm. So Asiatic Minds is amongst the other schools that you will find within the nation that is teaching a new paradigm, that is teaching our children who they are, that is teaching our children that they are math, they are science, they are history. Everything that they learn is about that new mindset. And so this education, Asiatic Minds is helping with that, to teach the new mindset. Because once our children know who they are, and it is echoed not only in their home, not only when they are at a meeting and hear the lectures, but it is also echoed when they come to the formal, if you will, portion of education. Because of course, education is not just taught from 9 to 5, or it's not just taught in those certain block of time. Education is ongoing. It's all day, every day, from the time you wake up. So when they can hear that echoed, who they are, hear that truth, when they come to that institution, then that is going to cause a huge shift. And of course, we know, especially with our children, because I'm a product of public school. And if, most of us that are, you don't walk out of there with your head up high, because you don't, it's not very much that you see of us and how we have contributed. It's just those small little things, but it's really, the foundation isn't laid that the God is a Black man.
That's right.
And we are the direct descendants of the God who created the heavens and the earth. Okay, so once we start with that base, the sky's the limit. So that's what we're here to do, is to help to shift that paradigm, shift that mindset in that direction.
Now, STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. STEM courses provide a valuable opportunity for our students to learn that we, as you just explained, are at the root of all the sciences. Will Asiatic Minds have a STEM component and curriculum?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our science teacher, in particular, Sister Tiffany X, she actually taught. She's doing science for Asiatic Minds, which is absolutely going to be based in the STEM components. And she actually ran her own summer program um, dealing with STEM for students. So we have teachers who are already focused in that area. Of course, Brother Shahi, he's the math doctor. He will be bringing it, to the fullest for our students. And that technology piece, that's going to be worked into majority of our classes. And quite naturally, with us being online, that's the first level of technology that we will be dealing with. But also, that technology piece will be incorporated for students to be able to demonstrate what they have learned in a technological way. So it's making sure that they are in tune and utilizing computers and programs in a positive way, and showing that there is more than just of course, we will have written book reports, but of course, there are creative ways to display what we know and what we have attained of knowledge as well.
Mhm. Now, in addition to STEM, I know that you have courses in art, music, cursive writing, other things like critical thinking, character and moral development. With Asiatic Minds covering the full spectrum of the things that we need to learn as a people, how can parents contact you to learn more about how to enroll their children?
So everyone can log on to asiaticminds.com. That is exactly what you see on the screen there. And what you're able to do from there is you can sign up for open house. We have an open house coming up this Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if that doesn't work for you, there are other dates that will appear in the drop down box if this Saturday does not work for you as far as open house is concerned. There's also a place on the website that you can email me. You can send me questions. I do receive quite a few questions coming from the website, as well as give me a call. There is a telephone number on the website as well. I just want to make it as easy as possible for your questions to be answered. And then also there's a whole host of information on the website that you can take a look at. And of course, if it doesn't answer any question that you may have, don't hesitate, reach out. I'm your sister. I'm here to help you through it. And I love to talk to anyone who's willing to have that conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sister Sherrie. Your program sounds wonderful. I will be on there looking to enroll my children because that is one thing that we are definitely missing out in the public school system, which is knowledge of self. So after that, all other subjects are probably as easy as pie.
Yes, ma'am. And I do want to say thank you. I want to definitely thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, because if he did not sacrifice and do what he did, there's no way in the world I would be sitting here being able to do anything on behalf of our nation and our people and humanity in its whole. So I want to first and foremost thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for his contribution and sacrifice, as well as his family. I want to thank my husband for his sacrifice and helping me to have the opportunity to open this school. And I want to thank those who support me, such as NNV News. It means more than you know. And I think we all are on the same frequency, that it's nation time, and we are all doing our part to make sure that it happens. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And thank you for answering that call. You see, you couldn't get away from it. Thank you. All right. We look forward to having you back in the near future. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for joining us today as well, and for tuning in to National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Classes begin September 1st. To enroll, visit AsiaticMinds.com.
This is Sister Sherrie Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's final call cover story headline reads, "Severe weather lashes America." As hurricanes struck the South and tornadoes hit the Midwest region, droughts strangle Western states as the forces of nature and the destructive force of weather punishes the United States. The divine judgment of God is intensifying in the country. This FCN Volume Number 39 edition middle page article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is entitled, "God Has Come for the Black Man and Woman." To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the NNVnews.com Final Call Cover Report.
Please make sure you leave your comments and questions in the comment section below. Follow us on Facebook, National Network View, and make sure to check us out on Twitter as well, National Network View. This is Sergio Gutierrez with National Network View, signing off.